Hello and welcome back to the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast. I'm your host, Nate Goss. This month, PBS began the fall kickoff of its Great American Read series. This 8-part series explores and celebrates the power of reading told through the prism of America's 100 best-loved novels as chosen in a national survey. As the Great American Read website states, the series investigates how and why writers create their fictional worlds, how we as readers are affected by these stories, and what these 100 different books have to say about our diverse nation and our shared human experience. One book will be voted as America's best-loved book. At the library, we have check sheets available at the reference desk where you can see how many of the 100 books you've read or not read. I'm actually too embarrassed to admit how short I came up, but along with the rest of the Popular Services Department, I made it a goal to fill in a few blind spots over the past few months. So this is the first part in a series correlating with the Great American Read, where a member of our Popular Services Department agrees to come on and discuss a Great American Read they read for the first time. Today, I've asked Joe Hansen to talk about reading John Irving's A Prayer for Owen Meany. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Nate. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I was really excited to talk about this book because this also happened to be a book that I filled in as my big gap in reading when I looked over that checklist. But I was curious, why did you choose Prayer for Owen Meany as your PBS Great American Read?
Well, I noticed that my colleague Ellen Jennings listed this book as one of her favorites of all time. And that got my attention. And I've read a lot of John Irving, but for some reason I hadn't read A Prayer for Owen Meany, which is considered really one of his best books. And so I thought, I like John Irving, so I should take it on, especially when Ellen loved it so much.
Mm-hmm. My experience was actually similar where I was with some colleagues at the reference desk and we were all kind of just going, this is when the sheet first came out where you could check off all the ones you had read. And two different colleagues, they both kind of read the title Prayer for Owen Meany and said, oh, I love that book. And I was like, I feel like I had, up until that point, barely even heard anything about it.
It's funny because it's one of those books that either people love it or they don't really like it. And so you have to know what kind of reader you are if it would appeal to you.
Mm-hmm. So to give our listeners who maybe haven't heard of it a little bit of a context to this, would you mind just maybe giving a description of the book?
Sure. Owen Meany is this short, diminutive boy who has a damaged larynx, which causes his voice to be high and squeaky. And John Irving reveals this in his book, so whenever Owen talks, it's in all caps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to get used to that, yeah.
Yeah, and at one point, he sees a vision and he witnesses his death. And so he plans his life accordingly because he sees this vision and he believes it. And then his best friend, Johnny, learns why he's doing all this. And Owen had the unfortunate accident of playing baseball. And when he hit a ball, it hit Johnny's mother and killed her instantly. And so, despite that, Johnny still remains best friends with Owen. I think this book has one of the best opening lines I've ever read in a book. And
I think it's actually John Irving's favorite first line he's ever written for a book.
Oh, really?
I read in an interview, he didn't think he'd ever top a first line like this. Yeah,
and here it is. I am doomed to remember a boy with a wrecked voice, not because of his voice or because he was the smallest person I ever knew, or even because he was the instrument of my mother's death, but because he is the reason I believe in God. I am a Christian because of Owen Meany. So I read that, I'm like, whoa,
There's a lot packed into there.
A lot packed in. So you get the, Owen killing this is Johnny talking, Johnny's mother. And
Johnny's the narrator of the entire story,
yes.
Actually. That the friend of Owen Meany is really the voice we're hearing the entire time.
Correct. And so he describes Owen, but he describes what happened. And then you find out, Owen thinks he's an instrument of God. So you get a lot about Owen's spiritual development. And it's interesting because John Irving admits he's not especially religious.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I read that in an interview too. But, God, faith, and religion, these are huge themes in the book. I mean, they're all throughout it. Do you think that could make this book a turnoff or challenge for some readers?
It might, but it's not preachy, It gives a different perspective. Like Johnny isn't religious, really. He's kind of dubious, and because of Owen and what happens, and I'm not going to give any spoilers here, but because of Owen, he ends up finding religion and believing in God.
Despite himself being still kind of a pretty cynical person, even in that faith. I mean, throughout the entire book, as he's looking back or thinking about the politics of his day, it's not like the faith made him a sort of sentimental or saccharine type of person. I think that's what I really appreciate about the book was its representation of faith. It kind of ran the gamut as far as like the different types of religious people you run into.
Right.
It felt very real that way.
It did. And Johnny, you know, when we meet Johnny as an adult, I mean, it's kind of funny because he is an adult during Ronald Reagan's years, and you learn some of his skeptical feelings about politicians, and some of the quotes in there really rang true even for today.
Very biting, yeah.
Very biting. And I mean, this is written in 1989. The commentary on politicians and politics really rang true for today. This book had so many lines I wanted to highlight, you know?
Oh, I ended up buying a copy just because I kept underlining so many different things, and I knew I was going to want to go back to the shelf and just look through those lines again.
Just great lines. Like, here's a line from Owen. The only way you can get Americans to notice anything is to tax them or draft them or kill them.
Yeah. And that's, you know, they're kind of growing up in it's sort of the 60s, and there's the Vietnam War going on, and the JFK stuff going on. And so that's sort of the context of their childhood and as they're growing up. And Owen sort of plays just this wise and interesting voice throughout Johnny's life.
Yes. Yeah. And Johnny doesn't really want to go to Vietnam because he's going to be drafted. And there's just so many parts of this book that it brought out emotions, you know, in me. I was, you know, funny, sad, quirky, but you have to be willing to read a lot of narrative, you know. It's not a lot that happens in the book. It's, you know, if you like strong character building and conversations, this is a great book. Yeah,
I have to tell you, kind of along those, what you're saying there is, it is kind of a long book. It's like the paperback is 627 pages.
It's not a quick read.
and that was, to me, kind of daunting. It's been a long time since I've read a long fictional novel. And then I started reading it, and I'm just like, where is this going? I mean, I feel like it took like a long time. You're just getting to know a lot of different characters in this town, and it's a lot of just different small types of stories that happen, not seeming to add up to a whole lot.
And somehow John Irving brings all these things together at the end. They all come together.
And that's the thing, is the payoff was huge.
It was huge.
You kind of needed that.
And sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes in the book you might get a little frustrated and it's like, where is this? Why are they doing this? Where is this going? But you have to be patient with the book, and then you get the big payoff at the end.
Yeah.
And it's so dense that I do want to go back and read it again slowly. Like right now, you know, I'm always having to read the newest books that are coming up, so I'm on top of it. So I kind of read A Prayer for Owen Meany pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I wanted to dwell on it, and I didn't really have the luxury. Because if I dwelled on a 600-some page book, I wouldn't get through it very quickly.
You think that this definitely belongs on that Great American Reads list?
Oh, absolutely. It should even belong on like some of the greatest American novels ever written, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. And I didn't expect that. There's something that, you know, even just the title of it, I thought it was going to be a sentimental read. And
it's not at all.
And it's not at all. And I was very surprised by that. And it really wowed me, this book did.
Yeah. You got humor, you've got politics, you've got religion. He tackles all the major issues, you know, that are still relevant today. All the characters are just so well drawn.
There's even there's a principal at one point who's from Lake Forest.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
That doesn't make Lake Forest look too good, to be honest. But still, for whatever reason, John Irving does this big, long background on Lake Forest and the development of Lake Forest. And you're like, what is this doing here? But it's all there for a reason.
It's all there for a reason.
It's either there to paint the character, or it's there to give you that payoff in the end.
Yes, and you think maybe he's padding, but he's not. There's a reason for everything that's in this book. So you just have to go with it.
One of the parts that I loved was, it's a line that I continue to, in today's political environment, say over and over again. It says, whenever anyone said anything that was a lot of BS to him. Owen Meany used to say, you know what that is? That's made for television. That's what that is. And so I've been saying that lately is just whenever I see something really, not just in the media or whatever, but when someone says something that I think is kind of BS, it's like, well, that's made for television.
It's a great line.
So as a member of the Popular Services Department, I'm wondering if you have any other read-alikes maybe for someone who has already read Prayer for Owen Meany or just wants something that's similar to it or something that it struck a similar chord to you, maybe emotionally.
Well, I have to say his other books. If you haven't read John Irving, start with Owen Meany. The World According to Garp and Cider House Rules are also wonderful books. Some people comment on John Irving that sometimes his books are hit and miss, and that's true. There are a couple that weren't as good, but those three are excellent. So
if you like this book, give some more John Irving a chance and see what you think.
And check out the list. There's some really good books on there. I wrote a blog post about the list a while ago about what all the other people are reading.
The Great American Read list,
yes.
Yeah.
There are some books on there you're going to go, what, really? Like, 50 Shades of Grey. But remember, these are books that people loved. And 50 Shades of Grey got a lot of people reading books.
Yeah.
It was kind of almost a gateway book to other books, and I'm all for that. Anything that gets people to read.
Yeah, I liked actually how it was a good mix of your sort of classic novels with some more contemporary stuff. And I would even consider this more of a contemporary one, even though I think it should go down as a classic. I mean, John Irving is still alive, and this is a book that was written relatively recently. And then you also had like things like the Harry Potter series is on there, and like The Little Prince and stuff that I think Americans do consider classics, but don't always get that attention on the more prestigious lists and awards.
Right. And, if you're looking for something to read, check out the list. You'll find something on there for you.
Do you have another book that you're going to be reading soon or that you've decided you're going to read to fill in a gap in the list?
Yes, actually. It's the 250th anniversary of Frankenstein coming up, and believe it or not, I've never read Frankenstein. So I think what I'm going to do in October is listen to it, because when my current audiobook is over, I'm going to listen to Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So
that's great. Yeah, and actually, don't forget, our last episode was with Emily, who did a great talk on Frankenstein and the background and Mary Shelley.
Right.
That would be definitely worth it after you finish reading it.
Absolutely. How about you? Do you have anything you're going to read next?
Well, I actually just finished The Little Prince, which was on there, and it's a short read, so I was like, I can knock that one out. The other one that is a couple years in the works is I started Moby Dick like 3 years ago, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through. And if I can just finish the last quarter of the book, then I can cross that one off.
Yeah, that's one of those love-hate books.
Yeah.
A lot of people hate Moby Dick. So good for you for sticking through it.
Me taking so long makes it think that it's kind of a chore for me. But when I do read it, I do actually enjoy it. I just seem to kind of put it down for a while and then come back to it, which I think it's a book that you can do that if you want to.
And it's one of those books that makes like the top books ever written, and I feel kind of bad I haven't read it.
Yeah, and not everyone has to love it.
That's right. That's the beauty of books. There's so many out there.
That's right.
You'll find something you love.
All right, well, Joe, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your Great American Read.
Thanks, Nate. It's been fun.
Okay, so if you would like to check out Prayer for Owen Meany for yourself, we'll help you check this one off the list. We have the book, CD, audiobook, and ebook in our collection. Head on over to our website at cooklib.org and search the catalog, or just click the link in our show notes. If you want to learn more about the PBS Great American Read series, you can check out their website at pbs.org. You can also stop into the library and pick up one of those checklists to see how many books you've read. Don't forget to also visit our blog, Shelf Life. It's the easiest place to see what our librarians are reading every single week, and also catch fascinating stories about Libertyville, like Joe Murrow's recent post called Gentle as Lambs, A History of Lamb's Farm. That blog can be found at shelflife.cooklib.org. And of course, you can talk to us anytime on Twitter at Cook Library, or send us an email to webmaster@cooklib.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others and let them know they can catch future episodes by subscribing in Apple Podcasts or anywhere they like to get their podcasts. We will be back soon, but until then, keep reading, keep watching, and keep listening.